Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at Peopleware Chapter 9, which is called Saving Money on Space, so let's jump into it. Chapter 9 of Peopleware, it's called Saving Money on Space, and after a string of creative chapter titles, this one is surprisingly self-explanatory. On the topic of office floor plans, we've seen a trend over the past generation towards moving away from private or shared offices and cubicles toward open office layouts, which are simply rows of desks, generally unencumbered with noise or visual barriers. The idea is theoretically to save money on this space. The more workers that can be put into a given room, the less money is being spent on that space on a per worker basis. This seems like a good idea, especially given the ongoing need for a company to cut costs. But what's missing in that design decision is a failure to study the benefits, productivity or otherwise, of giving employees dedicated spaces on their own. The authors point out that the cost of an employee's salary is substantially more than the cost of office square footage, though that magnitude varies wildly, depending on the cost of real estate in a given area. Now, in the trend towards open offices, there have been some half-witted attempts to suggest that this arrangement increases productivity. And as proof, one author for Data Management magazine suggested this to be the case because of electricity distributions and ease of access for technical support staff. Now, as archaic as it might sound, there's been nothing to suggest that a more densely packed and louder environment, which is what the open office format is to its previous iteration of cubicles or private and semi-offices is, actually does increase productivity at all. But I guess we can sleep soundly knowing that the zeitgeist is optimized for electrical sockets. A case study that the authors offer here is of IBM's laboratory in Santa Teresa. Architect Gerald McHugh was given the responsibility to observe employees and design the suitable new space. The result was this, that the minimum space allotted for each employee should be 100 dedicated for that worker square feet and 30 square feet of working surfaces. Finally, each person should have an enclosed space so as to be insulated from their neighbor's noise. IBM followed the recommendation on the first two counts and got pretty close to the third. The vast majority of office workers do not have the benefit of an employer who would go to these lengths for their environment, and as a result, the annual surveys of Tom Demarco and Timothy Lister find that the majority of engineers find their workplaces unacceptably loud. This is thinking back to the previous chapter. So anecdotally, it's easy to remark that all else being equal, quieter is better, and that more spacious workplaces will be quieter because the noise is spread out more. But beyond the anecdote, is there observable veracity to this assertion? To test this, the authors split their evaluation groups in the Code War games by who reported acceptably quiet working conditions and who did not. And the big observation here, that those who said their workplaces were acceptably quiet were a third more likely to deliver zero defect work. And of the people who delivered zero defect work, 66% reported their noise level conditions were acceptable, while the ones with one or more defects, only 8% shared that belief. This is a very important insight to be aware of, and if the folks on your team ever complain about noise, it's worth paying attention to, as they're signaling that being productive is more difficult than it can or should be. And finally, even if people don't vocally bring up this concern, you might see your employees taking up conference rooms or other office nooks by themselves. And this is just another way that they try to get away from the fray to accomplish more and better work. In the absence of that, the authors say, quote, saving money on space may be costing you a fortune.